So today we're going to talk about and wrap up light within the shadows with light, camera, action. Lights, camera, action. So all of us are familiar with that term, right? Lights, camera, action. Yeah, most of us have heard that before. And I want to talk about it in the context of American icon, someone who recently passed, who was just this incredible force of nature. And I'm talking about none other than Tina Turner. I am so inspired by her life. I have gone down the rabbit hole since her passing, learning all that I could learn about her life, and some of which I want to share with you today. And I also want to just take the opportunity. It's Memorial Day weekend, it's a holiday, folks are doing things, and I just thought it would be nice for us to interact a little bit more today. So at different points during today's talk, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And if you want to share something, you can share it. If you want to put something in the chat, you could put it in the chat. If you're on Facebook and you want to put something in the comments, you could do that also. But I want to take us on a little journey with Tina Turner. And last night, I found a documentary about her life called Tina that's pretty recent. It was like in 2021, and it might have been one of the last interviews that she has given. And the documentary opens up with her singing. And the song that she's singing, I never heard of it before. The song is called Ask Me How I Feel. Jesse, have you heard that before? That song, Ask Me How I Feel by Tina Turner? Never, anyone? Ask Me How I, never heard this song before. But I want to share the opening verse. Oh, I'm waiting in the storm. Ask me how I feel. When things are going wrong, why don't you ask me how I feel? The night is awful cold. Ask me how I feel. You're much too loose to hold. Why don't you ask me how I feel? And then right after that, Tina, she must have been maybe 80, is being interviewed. And one of the things that she says about her legacy is that she stayed on course. She said, from the beginning to the end, because I believe in something inside of me. I believe in something inside of me. And that reminded me of a phrase that we used to say when I was in grad school. And before we would practice a counseling approach, we would say, center yourself within yourself and invoke your inner counselor. Can you hear me? Okay. And invoke your inner counselor. Center yourself in yourself and invoke your inner counselor. So Tina believed that there was something inside of her. And I believe that something that was inside of her is the same thing that is within each and every one of us, that we get to invoke our inner counselor. We get to invoke our divineness, right? In the light and in the shadow. So when we think about light, camera, and action, sometimes we might think of like being ready for our close-up. What's that famous line? I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeVille, you know that line. Are you ready for your, okay, thank y'all. Thank y'all, right? And so oftentimes we think about it as an external process, lights, camera, and action. But for Tina Turner, one of the things that I gleaned from watching the documentary and just seeing her being interviewed is that at some point, she realized that the light, camera, and action for her, as it is for all of us, is an internal proposition. The light, the camera, and the action is taking place within us first. And if we believe that it's taking place outside of us first, this is what gets us in some, let's say stress, let's say trouble, right? So we know, most of us know the trials and tribulations of Tina Turner's life. You may have seen the movie. Oh, thank you, Chris. All right, I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. Thank you, Chris. So if you saw the movie, What's Love Got to Do with It? Anyone saw that movie? Okay, let me tell you right now, if you have not seen What's Love Got to Do with It, Angela Bassett plays Tina Turner and Lawrence Fishburne plays Ike Turner. It is a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. And Tina Turner was involved in the making of that film. And so it's depicting what really happened to her, especially in her relationship with Ike Turner. And just watch it. Just watch it. So I'm not going to go into all of what happened there, but needless to say, there was a lot that she has come through. There's a lot that she has persevered through. And there's a lot that we could learn from her life through that willingness to not let her light go out. She would not let her light go out. So in the documentary, Tina said that she was living a life of death. She said she didn't exist, but she survived it. And when she walked out and didn't look back. So the light within the shadow started to shine for her when she left this abusive relationship with Ike Turner. And we must remember that there is light in the shadow. There is light within the darkest times of our lives. And for Tina, something helped her to shift the frequency of her light. And what helped her to shift that frequency of her light was Buddhism. She became a Buddhist. And in the documentary, she shares that Buddhism for her became the promise for a different life. She said that Buddhism promised change. She said it was a way out. It liberated her mentally through the mystical laws of the universe, making her able to manifest the things that she wanted in her life. She said the sound of chanting connected her back to the universe. So through this practice of going within, connecting with her light within herself, she was able to change and reclaim her name and herself. And so Ernest Holmes would capture it this way. He says that we should turn within. We should turn within and find God. And that is exactly what Tina Turner did. And this is exactly what we get to do when we're having a heck of a time. Turn within and find God. Because the light is within. The light is within. The camera is reflecting back what we need to see. So what lens are you looking through? Are you looking through the lens of the problem, or are you looking through the lens of the revelation? How are you seeing yourself, right? What picture do you have of yourself? What pictures are you creating for your life? And what is the action that you are activating from within yourself? That is the light, the lights, camera, and action that I'm speaking about. Not the external light. It is the internal light. The internal light that we get to turn within and find again when we feel that the shadow has totally blocked out our sunshine. It's still there. Someone recently said, that even when it's cloudy outside, the sun is still shining, right? We may not see it, but it's still there. And so is the case when we are going through our dark night of the soul. So after she left Ike Turner and she was struggling to make a career for her life, she was asked by her manager, "What do you want? What do you want?" Has anyone ever asked you that question? What do you want? And oftentimes we start talking about what we don't want instead of what we do want, right? But it's important to know what we want. It's important to put our order into the universe. I often say that the universe is just waiting to take our order. How may I help you today? How may I be of service to you today? And sometimes our response is, I don't know. But we need to know. And the answer is within us. And it's nothing too big. There's nothing too big for the universe. Nothing too big for the universe. So this is what Tina said to answer that question that her manager asked her. What do you want? Now, mind you, Tina's around like 40 years old, right? And in this society that we live in, 40 is often seen as the turning point that you should start thinking about the planning for the ending of your life, not planning for how you're going to restart your life, right? She said this. She said, "I have a dream. I want to be the first Black rock and roll singer to pack stadiums like the Rolling Stones." At this point in her career, she was in Vegas doing cabaret. But when she was asked, "What do you want?" this was her answer: packing stadiums like the Rolling Stones. This was the picture, the internal picture that she had taken with her camera, right? Her soul's lens saw her packing stadiums like the Rolling Stones. And that made me think about something that Michael Beckwith says pretty often, that the pain will push us until the vision pulls us. And Tina Turner had a lot of pain that pushed her. And now she was in a place where there was a vision that was pulling her, right? So she's practicing her spiritual practice of Buddhism. She's doing the things that she needs to do to heal the hurt from within her. And we know that healing is not linear. Life is not linear, right? It just isn't. It's not like this, y'all. It's not like that. It's like this, right? It's like that. And that pretty much captures my month of May. Yes, yes, Roxanne giving me a bullseye. So Tina also shared that in addition to Buddhism helping her to shine her light again, she also practiced forgiveness. And it wasn't just forgiveness for Ike Turner. It was forgiveness for her mother, her father, her childhood, so many things that happened in her life. She said that she realized that forgiveness is about letting go. She said she had to learn that by not forgiving, she was suffering. By not forgiving, because she kept thinking about what had happened to her over and over and over again. So we have to be willing, if we choose, to forgive, to let it go, to do our healing work that might include some shadow work, right? But within all of that, guess what is still present? That light. That light is still present. Center yourself in yourself and invoke your inner counselor. That sweet voice that speaks to us from beyond our current situations, from beyond anything that has happened to us. It calls to us, it invites us to step into our light, to turn it up, right? To not have the dimmer on, but to turn it up and to let it shine. The other thing she said, in addition to Buddhism, that helped her to shift her frequency and shine her unique light in the world was acceptance. This was a big one for me growing up. I didn't want to accept nothing. If it wasn't going my way, I wasn't accepting it. I would push against it with all of my might. My mother would say I was a very stubborn child, and I was. Because I was not in acceptance, I was in resistance to so many things. And so Tina said, acceptance for her is simply saying, it is what it is. It is what it is. Because until we can accept that it is what it is, we're not going to be able to deal with the reality that is before us, the reality that is seeking our attention. Because in the non-acceptance, we are in a distraction. We are not in the reality of it all. She says she came to a point of accepting what happened and for accepting people for who they are. Now we could take a deep breath on that, right? Accepting people for who they are. Can you bring to mind somebody right now that you may be in resistance to accepting? I see you, Chris. Accepting them for who they are. Anyone come to mind? I think we all might have at least one, right? But guess what? The light, camera, and action of our life is not embedded in who they are. It's embedded in who we are. So let's accept them for who they are, for their journey, for their lessons that they are learning, right? For their soul's agreements that have been made with our soul. And we're like, so why did you agree to that? Right? So acceptance is powerful. She said, we really can't make something what it is not. And we especially can't make other people what they are not. We accept what is for what it is and move forward and upward. So if life is like this, right? If life is kind of like a roller coaster at times, I want to take us back to the song that she was singing in the documentary. Ask me how I feel. Ask me how I feel. Right? Oh, I'm waiting in the storm. Ask me how I feel. When things are going wrong, why don't you ask me how I feel? The night is awful cold. Ask me how I feel. You're much too loose to hold. Why don't you ask me how I feel? So let me ask you, how do you feel? How do you feel? You could put it into the chat if you're on Zoom. You could put it on the comments if you're on Facebook. So let me just share. Roxanne said numb. So let's just breathe that in for Roxanne. We just extend love and light to Roxanne. Because we're all connected. We're all connected. So are you in a storm? Are you waiting in a storm? Is your light still on? What is your camera taking as a picture of your life now? What actions are you activating? We are in lights, camera, action. So this week for me has been a roller coaster. It wasn't like this. It wasn't linear at all. And if I had to pick a weather forecast for this week, it would be a range of sunshine to tornadoes. That would be the range for me. I don't know if anybody else can relate. And this is kind of how it went. Last Saturday, I was at my dear friend's graduation. You'll know him, Pastor Albert. He got his doctorate degree, and I was there at the graduation. And if you ask me how I feel at that moment, I would have said, oh, I feel happy. I feel so happy, right? Woo! Right? Going up in that roller coaster. Woo! Yes, this is good. Yes, loving life. During the graduation, I get a call from my mother. She's in excruciating pain. I asked her, do you want to go to the hospital? She says, yes. Ask me how I feel. Starting to go down, right? I was very concerned. I leave the graduation, run to my mother's house. Thankfully, I was already in Brooklyn. So I was only 7 minutes away from my mother. If I was still at home, I would have been 45 minutes away from my mother, right? It makes me think about that. It's a Taoist story. Like, isn't this a blessing? What if this too is a blessing? Are you familiar with that? What if everything that happens is a blessing, right? So my mom is admitted into the hospital. Ask me how I feel. I was afraid. I was scared. I was really afraid. And then the next day, I'm at one of my daughter's school watching her sing her heart out. There's no business like show business. Ask me how I feel. I was just elated. I was just so, oh my goodness, so proud, right? Then the next day, I'm back at the hospital dealing with arrogant, and I'm not saying all are, dealing with arrogant doctors. Ask me how I feel, right? I think the medical term for how I felt was pissed off. That's how I felt. And then my mother gets discharged from the hospital. Ask me how I feel, right? This is all in 1 week. 1 week. Someone is sharing. I can't see who it is. Last Saturday, Roxanne, I was burying my 29-year-old godson in Atlanta. This Saturday, celebrated my 21-year-old godson's birthday. Look at this. Look at this. So we can understand the feeling of numbness that Roxanne is experiencing right now. But what I want Roxanne and all of us to know, that we have a center within ourselves. And that center is flooded with light. Light that we get to bathe ourselves in. Light that we get to reconnect ourselves with, because it never disconnects from us. Even when we're in that roller coaster and it feels like life has disconnected itself from us, it has not. We get to make that reconnection from within. We get to center ourselves in ourselves and invoke our inner counselor again and again and again. And that was one of the things that I stopped doing. And that halfway through the week, I realized that I was not doing my spiritual practices. I would just get up and run out the house to go to the hospital. And I realized my light was like this big, still on, but it was dimming. It was dimming. So when things start to happen in our lives, what's our go-to? Oftentimes, the thing that we don't go to is the thing that we need to go to. And that is our spiritual practice. That is our relationship with the presence that's always present. Oftentimes, Jan talks about this all the time in our caregiving support group. Oftentimes, when we're caring for someone, the person that we don't care for is ourselves. We're not even on the list. So Tina Turner's life is a demonstration of someone who, regardless of the circumstances that she found herself in, she was able to shine her light so bright in this world. That vision that she held for herself to be the first Black woman to fill a stadium like the Rolling Stones. She is referred to as the queen of rock and roll, right? She got to do that because she stayed connected to her light. She allowed her light to lead her. She talks about her spiritual practice of Buddhism, of forgiveness, of acceptance. We can't let those things go. Whatever it is that works for you, whatever it is that sustains you, that supports you, whatever your sustenance is, we need it every day. We need it every day. So I realized I was malnutrition. I wasn't doing my spiritual practice. And so I said, okay, this is enough. Let's get back to our spiritual practice, revmelissa, right? What are you doing? I fuss at people about not doing their spiritual practice. And here I am doing the very same thing that I fuss at other people about doing. So the wonderful thing about the light is that it's always waiting. It always welcomes us home. Because as Chris said in her meditation, it's eternal. It's eternal. It's eternal. So I got back into the rhythm of the universe, got back into my daily spiritual practice, inviting the inner counselor before I stepped out my door, before I engaged the external light. Packed up my clothes. My mother's at my sister's house. She's getting better and better. Marco and I were planning to go to Vegas to attend his best friend's 25th year wedding renewal. And I'm a late packer, so I always wait till the night before and I pack. But this time I was packed like 2 days before. I was very proud of myself. Ask me how I feel. I felt proud of myself, right? The day before we leave, we had to cancel the trip. Marco got sick. Ask me how I feel. Disappointed, but also kind of relieved, right? And he's doing much better today, right? But as those things were happening, it wasn't feeling like this. It was feeling more like this. Oh, and then a little beep. Then we just keep going. Then a little bleep. Because the light and the camera and the action that I was taking and that we get to take when we go through things, and what Tina Turner's life is demonstrating to us, her legacy is that I stayed on course from the beginning to the end because I believed in something inside of me. I believed in something inside of me. What do you believe? And that's inside of you. Anyone, you can unmute or you could put it in the chat. What do you believe is inside of you? Power. Yes, Chris. Everlasting power. Infinite power. And I love that word power because it's not something that we have to create. It's something that we get to use. Light, Jan, yes. The light is within us. Go within. See yourself through the eyes of God. Possibility, yes, Chris. All things are possible. There are infinite possibilities. Can we believe that within ourselves? Tina had a vision of filling a stadium, the possibility of this woman who grew up dirt poor in Nutbush, Tennessee, had a vision of the possibility that is transforming lives, I believe. Let me look on Facebook. Greatness. Yes, Julian. Julian believes that what is within her is greatness. And it is. Because how are we made? We are made awesomely. We are made wondrously. That is greatness. And are you viewing your life? Is your camera lens tuned into that greatness, tuned into that possibility, tuned into the light, tuned into the power that is within you already? What are you capturing with your camera? What lens are you using? Is it in focus or is it distorted? Thank you all for sharing that. So I just want to invite us as we close this out to just take a moment, if you will, and just close your eyes and go within. And let's just take a couple of centering breaths within and without. Your light is on. Know this. It's time to turn it up, brighter. What vision do you hold for yourself? What do you believe is within you? What do you want your internal camera to capture as your life? Can you see it? Do you believe it? What do you want? What action are you willing to take to center yourself in yourself and invoke your inner counselor? Just take another breath. Now I would just invite you to sit with those questions during the week and just see what's there, because we know that the answers are within us. Lights, camera, action. You are the light. Peace and blessings, everyone.